Hello friends, I am coming from Palm Harbor, Florida, and today I wanted to talk about recap the marathon that I just ran. Just seeing everybody running Boston over the weekend. Man, I had definitely major FOMO and really am trying to stay in the best state in making that excitement, energized to know that one day I will be there. But to really just recap, how the marathon went, and talk more about the struggles and leading up to it, and in the end didn't lead to a Boston qualifier, but why it was probably one of the best marathons despite the challenges that I faced, and still ended up being a personal record, which is definitely super exciting. So how did we get there and how did the race go? So I ran the Wineglass Marathon. I am living in Florida right now, so I trained during this summer, originally from upstate New York area, so I really wanted to run the Wineglass. Actually, supposed to actually run this race 2 years ago, the first year that I wanted to run it to try to shoot for Boston qualifying time was in 2019. Then in 2020, COVID happened, so of course the race was canceled. Then here leaves us with 2021. In 2020, we moved down to Florida, so I was excited that I was going to be able to train in beautiful weather longer. So during the winter months, I didn't have to really take off time from running. I could run all year, but definitely running in the summer in Florida for a fall marathon is not ideal. It wasn't the best. It was definitely a struggle. There were days on those long runs that I just wanted it to be over. And actually, I have always been somebody that loves endurance running. I love the longer the better. I really enjoy those long runs and just really like to just go at an easy pace and just keep going. But these long runs were really brutal. It warms up really, really fast. So I try to get out there early, but by 9 a.m., you're going to be into the upper 80s, 90s. Even at 4 or 5 a.m., it is already 75 degrees, very humid, maybe 90% humidity. So it was tough. I had my hydration, which is probably the only reason why I could get through those long runs, is having that hydration pack with me. I know that saved me a lot of times and taking those salt pills. But there was walking. There were times where I just really, really struggled. Mentally, I really struggle as well. So the coach I've been working with as well has really taught me a lot about the mental training that it comes to marathon training. It's not just about physical training, but also your mental, the mental training as well. So that is probably the biggest struggle I've had. So I know working with my coach has definitely helped, but certainly that struggle has still been there, because there's still times where I look at my watch and I'm like, I'm not hitting my paces. I'm not doing it. I can't do it. And of course, it's not what you want to do. You want to tell yourself, yes, I can. Yes, I can. I can do this. I am amazing. I can do this. And little by little, you do get faster. You do get better. Even if there are days that you have bad workouts, even if there's times where you can't get your workout in, as long as you are consistent and just keep going, you will be able to get to your goal. So what happened during the race when I finally got to the race that I finally was dreaming of doing for the past 2 years to hope to qualify for Boston? Well, what happened was truly an epic fail. And as a nutritionist, as a dietitian, as well as a run coach, it's really kind of hard to admit that out of all the people you would think I would be able to fuel properly, but I did not. I think I set myself up for success, so it was all there and the plan was there. But unfortunately, the morning of the race got off to a little rocky start. I wasn't able to get dropped off at the start, so I had to take a bus, which I wasn't planning on doing. So I was almost late to the start of the race, which kind of got me all kind of a little worried that I was going to be late. I wasn't able to, I like to write down my splits with a marker. I didn't have a permanent marker. And it was also rainy, kind of cold compared to the weather that I have in Florida. So I grew up in upstate New York, so I'm used to that kind of weather, but certainly wasn't really ideal conditions. So I started the race with soaking wet shoes. Was alone really at the start of the race. There was no one else that I knew. I did know lots of people that I saw at the end of the race, but of course everyone's just getting ready to run, and I didn't really was just kind of alone, and I put myself at around the 3:40 marker for pacers. My coach always tells us not to follow a pacer. We should run our own race. Also believes in negative splits. A pacer does do even splits, and he teaches us how to run negative splits, which was the goal. So my goal was actually to start at 8:30 pace and move myself down to around an 8 or under minute pace. So my coach did set me up for a 3:40 marathon. So I wasn't quite set up for a Boston qualifying time, which I would had to run under a 3:30, ideally around a 3:25 to actually get me probably into the Boston Marathon, since the qualifying times are a little more strict, a little more tight now. But I felt really, really good. So even though my shoes were soaking wet, I was a little bit cold. My hands did get cold a little bit during the race. My feet were actually okay, surprisingly. And I try not to let the weather really bother me and just really kind of feel how I felt. And I felt so strong. For the first 20 miles, I felt so strong. I started at 8:30 for probably the first 10K, and then I kind of picked it up to an 8-minute pace. Was feeling really, really great. All the way to 8-minute miles. I actually had a guy that was trying to qualify for Boston as well, much older than me. He was about a 55-year-old guy, but he was trying to run a negative split as well and get to run his Boston qualifying time. So he had a really great attitude. I loved chatting with him. We were both running probably 8-minute pace, and we were just both chatting, just it was so easy. And he looks at me probably at maybe almost at 20 miles and is like, so how do you feel? Do you feel like we just ran 20 miles? I'm like, no, I feel really good. So I was super excited. Actually, that might have been actually more like 15 miles, 18 miles. I don't think that was quite 20, because what I remember is after 20, I started to fade a little bit. I thought, there's no way I can keep up this pace. I just can't do it. My legs are fatiguing so bad. I did have my gels on me. I actually had taken 5 gels with me. I took 4 salt pills that I was supposed to take every hour. Ended up not taking my salt pills. Ended up losing all my gels. The first gel, I had it in my hand, but because my hands were wet since it was raining for, I think probably the first half of the race, it was raining the whole time. Not really hard, but just kind of drizzly. The gel actually slipped right out of my hand onto the floor. And of course, there's just a stampede of runners around me. So I'm like, okay, just keep going. It's okay, have an extra. I brought 5 gels. So I decided, maybe I'll just wait a little bit. I'll wait 15 minutes and I'll try again, take my other gel. Tried again. I dropped it again. This time I didn't even get it open. I had it in my hand and it just flew out of my hand. I was like, okay, this sucks. And they actually were passing out the gels that I use, the Huma gels. So I grabbed one. So I ended up having one. And then probably a little around 20 miles, I think, is when I started to really feel the fatigue in my legs, thinking, I don't know if I can keep this up. And really probably when what I really needed was to replace those glycogen stores, and I needed a gel. I looked down at my running belt that I had with me, and my gels that I had were gone. I also stuck in gels in my sports bra, kind of the side of my boobs here. They were gone. I was like, oh, my gels are gone. I said, okay, just keep going. Hopefully they will have more on the course. They did not have any more gels on the course at any of the stations, but I just kept on going. I kept on trekking. I knew I was slowing down, but I knew it was okay because the 340 pacer was behind me. So I knew no matter what, I just had to keep going and I was going to still PR. So I was like, okay, Boston qualifying is probably out of it right now. It's probably not going to happen, but I just need to keep going. It just got worse and worse. The fatigue in my legs were so bad, and I don't know if this is from my training and just not feeling mentally, just being used to that fatigue in my legs that long, because in my long runs, I probably leading up to the marathon, I did some marathon race pace, but I didn't do really long runs with marathon race pace. So it could be that, but I also think it had a lot to do with not having I shouldn't say not having the gels, not replacing my glycogen stores. So somehow I ran out of glycogen stores and my muscles really fatigued. I did end up stopping in the middle of the race. I thought, okay, I'll just stop and I'll just, collect myself. I had a hat on. It stopped raining. So I ended up taking the hat off, playing with my hair, putting it back up. A bunch of runners went by and I was like, it's okay, just collect yourself. You can keep going. You can do this. Kept going, maybe went 1 or 2 more miles. I saw my parents. My parents were out on the course. I saw them probably 4 or 5 times. And I finally decided, but I saw my mom and I was really, really struggling. I was like, I don't have gels. I need a gel. So, of course, she's trying to scramble looking for one. Couldn't find anything. But she did meet me at the next rest stop and found some pretzels and a date. I took that date. I took a couple bites of pretzels. I did stop on the side of the road because I was just dying, fatiguing so bad, and I honestly didn't even know if I could keep going. But once I got that in my system, she was like, "You bolted. I didn't even say bye. You just went." And I was like, "Yeah, that's all I needed. I knew that was all I needed, was just something in my system to be able to finish." I wasn't able to really kick it in as much as I thought I could. I still went from an 8-minute mile down to a 9. I think one of my miles was a 10-minute mile, probably at my worst, but I think I was probably around 9-minute miles. So I really couldn't really push as much as I wanted to because that fatigue was just so much. But I felt so strong. I mean, I probably have felt the strongest in any marathon. And I did not see that coming up to 20 miles. I thought, oh, I have this in the bag, because at that 10K mark, you want to race. It is race time. And I had that mindset in my mind the whole time. I just have to make it to 20 miles. Once I get to 20 miles, then it's race time. But my legs were so fatigued, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't kick it in. And it really had to do, could have some to do with training, but also I feel like it had a lot to do with just not having those glycogen stores that I needed. I did have oatmeal in the morning before the race, and I had gluten-free pasta the night before. So I definitely had carbohydrates. I definitely, I always recommend for clients, the race leading up, make sure to fuel more carbohydrates. But, if you're plant-based, it should be enough carbohydrates. You should be eating, maybe if you could be around 60% carbohydrates, but if you're around 60, move it up to more like 80% of your total calories coming from carbohydrates. So you still want to increase them, but the great thing is eating plant-based is mostly your diet is already carbohydrates. But of course, that's also important as well. But I did do that. I did try my best to fuel as well as I could leading up to the race. Felt hydrated. Oh, that was really good. But definitely felt like if that was what bonking is, that's definitely what I felt. Because I definitely felt so fatigued that I didn't know if I could keep running, which is really scary, especially when you work so hard for something. But this is the first year that I've ever actually been able to complete 2 marathons in a year, which is super exciting. I've always wanted to. intention is to always complete, has always been, like, since I've started running marathons, is to complete a spring and fall marathon. But past couple of years has been super challenging with changing careers, moving, those sort of things, just kind of life happenings, things like that. But that definitely was my first time ever balking and really having that bad of fatigue. But I still felt really, really strong, which was really, really exciting. So I know my training did go well, and know that I need to just keep pushing and keep going, and not give up, and really use the energy and seeing everybody running Boston as, instead of feeling really sad and down and disappointed, feel that I need to take that as inspiration, that I can be there one day. I am so close to being there. I ran a personal record of 3:41, so if I hadn't goofed up and I was able to fuel properly, I most likely would have probably ran around a 3:30, 3:32. So I was on track for that. If I could have really, really, really pushed it, which probably would have been really challenging, I might just not be there yet. I could have ran under a 3:30, which is what I need to qualify for Boston. But coach agreed with me that I just might not be there yet, but we're certainly so, so close. So wherever you are on your Boston qualifying journey, just know that your journey is your journey. It may take you longer than others, and that's okay. But don't give up. Don't give up on the journey. Keep fighting, keep training, and just keep doing everything that you can possibly do to get yourself better and set yourself up for success. And that's why I'm also here and love doing what I do, to help other runners and to help you so you don't make the same mistake that I did, because it is really disappointing and it's really hard, and in a way, as a coach, it's kind of embarrassing as well. But these things happen. It just shows you real life that you never know what a marathon is going to throw at you. The day of, you never know what the weather is going to be like, and you just only can prepare and learn and do your best. That's all you can really do. So that is my recap for running the Wineglass Marathon 2021, and a little bit about where I'm at in my journey to BQ.